UFC 289 is an abomination to humanity, and the fact that the UFC is asking us to chalk up $80 for this pay-per-view is an absolute slap in the face to each and every one of us fans that love to tune in for the pay-per-views. And another thing that the UFC has done to dupe us into buying this is basically taking advantage of their number one supporters, the guys that are actually getting their pay-per-views consistently, because they know that it doesn't matter what we serve on a plate, even if it's dirt, we're going to have a group of suckers that are going to get convinced to get whatever we're putting down. And they've also conveniently had a bunch of really underwhelming fight nights prior to this UFC 289 event so that we could think that, oh, wait a second, we've had nothing but terrible, awful fights. And now we at least get Charles Oliveira and Beneil Dariush. And if I've sat through these other fight nights, which, to be honest, some of them have played out and actually been pretty entertaining, I'm one of the suckers, basically. Well, at least we're definitely going to buy Charles Oliveira and Beneil Dariush. Thank God the pay-per-view is back. That's how they get you, man. They trick you into, making this a pay-per-view, a title fight on the line, even though it's Amanda Nunes and Irene Aldana. And I couldn't give less of a shit about the outcome of that fight. And this is the worst pay-per-view that we have had in 4 years. And I've done my research. I've looked at all the pay-per-views. The last pay-per-view that was this bad was actually headlined by Max Holloway. And that sounds great, right? Max Holloway. But he was fighting Frankie Edgar. So that was kind of a freebie. And at least Max was actually the main event. Now, the co-main event was Chris Cyborg. And that was it. But I want to show you guys just how terrible and horrific this card actually is. And again, I want you to keep this in mind. The UFC is charging a fortune for this card. All right, let's just dive into the main event. Amanda Nunes having an absolute freebie, just a status quo fight against Irene Aldana, who most certainly doesn't really deserve a title shot, but because there ain't anyone else in the division that deserves a title shot, they're just going to basically pick a name out of the hat. I also want to just mention that the only person that could actually pitch this fight to you with a straight face would be like a cringy Christian youth pastor, a guy that would try to tell you how bad and tough both of these bad women are. You know what I mean? Like, it's just a bit of a joke, to be honest. I am guaranteeing this right now. After Charles Oliveira and Beneil Dariush get out of the cage when their fight has finished, we're going to see heaps of fans lining up in the stands to leave that stadium in Canada. I guarantee it. There's nothing at stake. And we've just seen Amanda Nunes lose to Juliana Pena a year and a half ago. That was the big shock that was inevitable at some point if she were to keep fighting. If she loses to Irene Aldana, given that we just saw Shevchenko get taken out by Grasso, it's just going to be another one of those upsets that it's okay, but like I'm only going to talk about it for a minute after. And that's it. So once again, you can't sell this for $80. Charles Oliveira and Beneil Dariush is a fantastic fight, but we're not here to talk about that. Mike Mallet. This is a guy that is on the feature fight of a pay-per-view just because he's from Canada, and I understand they don't really have a lot of names on the card, and they want to put a Canadian up here. He's undefeated in the UFC, but no one really knows Mike Mallet, and people don't really care about him. And like the thing is, he's not like Ian Gary. You know, there are some guys that have a couple of fights in the UFC that actually have some pop behind their name. This is basically a nobody. And he's fighting Adam Fuckett. And that's literally what the theme of the card is. The UFC basically sat here and said, fuck it. Like the fact that Dan Ige and Nate Landwehr is below Mike Mallet and Adam Fuckett is just crazy to me. Nate Landwehr is a brawler. I can't wait to see him fight. Dan Ige, I'm not too inspired by his style. He's not that entertaining to watch, but nonetheless, he's pretty all right, and it should make for a great scrap. But guys, when we're talking about the good fights on this card, we have one being Charles and Dariush, we have Dan Ige and Nate Landwehr, Nasruddin Imavov and Chris Curtis, and that's it. Because guess what? That Khalil Roundtree and Chris Daukaus fight is no longer on the card. Chris Daukaus just pulled out. We got news of that today. So this was a fight that was goated for being a great meme in the making. We would have seen Chris Daukaus' debut at light heavyweight, the most shredded man alive, finally cut down into a lighter weight class. We don't even get to see this. This one's gone. Goodbye. No meme fight for us. So we have Nasruddin Imavov and Chris Curtis, which is an interesting fight. I have to admit, that's a good one. That's a good scrap. Charles Oliveira, Beneil Dariush, Dan Ige, Nate Landwehr, and that's it. Eric Anders and Marc-Andre Barriou is welcome to the skill graveyard. There ain't nothing to see here. You're in the middleweight division, and you're at the bottom of the barrel. All right? You're at the bottom of the middleweight division. You know what that means. It means toss the skills out the window. We're rocking with the cardio kickboxing skill set. All right, let's see what else we got. Miranda Maverick and Jasmine Jasudavicius. Eamon Zahabi, Kyle Nelson, Blake Builder, and Akri Lang. I'm not going to be able to pronounce that, but these are basically Bellator prelims, and that's even a compliment. I'm sure that Eamon Zahabi and Kyle Nelson, they're both from Canada, and they're going to have their 10 screaming family members there in attendance, but that's it. That's the only people that are actually going to care about this fight. Like, you guys cannot tell me that you're such a hardcore fan that you just can't, like, you're breaking down the door to watch Kyle Nelson and Blake Builder. All right? Just stop, man. And David Dvorak. Oh, wow. We're getting real hardcore here. Dvorak. Oh, wow. This guy has a Eastern European last name. He must be the real deal. Versus Steven Ekrek. You know? We don't even have a picture of this guy. I mean, come on, man. This is terrible. This is absolutely disgusting. Guys, what do you want me to say about the early prelims? And the fact that there's only 2 fights, I guess they'll put us out of our misery a little bit quicker with a faster card. It would have been a better fight night. I'm telling you guys right now, if the UFC came out here and said, we're going back to Canada. We have Charles Oliveira. We have Beneil Dariush. And the GOAT's coming back, Amanda Nunes. And it's a fight night too. We'd all be like, wow, this is massive. This is big. They're putting Charles in a stadium for a fight night, a title fight for a fight night. That sounds special. That sounds great. That doesn't happen all that often. And we'd all be over the moon about it because we all have our little like subscriptions to ESPN Plus or whatever, and it ain't a big deal. But the fact that this is $80 is a disgrace, all right? This is the worst pay-per-view since 2018. I would say that the Max Holloway Edgar pay-per-view may have even been worse because that fight was like, again, you already know Max is going to win it, and it didn't even play out as an entertaining fight to begin with. It was kind of a snoozer. Oliveira, Beneil Dariush guaranteed to deliver. Amanda Nunes, Irene Aldana. This is probably going to be a fun fight. I'm not going to lie. It's probably going to be good. You know? Amanda Nunes doesn't have a lot of boring scraps. But the fact that it's $80. Mike Mallet. Nobody really knows who this guy, and I'm not saying that he's not a good fighter. I'm not saying that he can't be entertaining. It's probably going to be good. He has 3 finishes in the UFC. But like $80, man, I'm just going to keep bringing that number up. You could do a lot better with $80. I mean, you could go out and have a couple of good dinners. You know, you could spend that money on your groceries. Marc-Andre Barriou, Eric Anders, going to be a sloppy striking match. Nate Landwehr, Dan Ige will be an interesting scrap. Hopefully Nate Landwehr actually wins and has a cool moment on the mic. Mike Mallet is probably going to go out there and finish Adam Fugit. I'll say his name properly right now. I think that's actually how you pronounce his name. And then Charles Oliveira is probably going to lose to Beneil Dariush. The fans are going to be booing. People are going to be upset, even though Beneil Dariush speaks English and Charles doesn't. And for whatever reason, we can all relate to Charles more than we can to, you know, Bible Beneil. Listen, I like Beneil Dariush. I'll be happy if he wins. I'll be sad for Charles, but we know that the fans are going to be booing when he gets on the mic after taking out our boy. And then Amanda Nunes, Irene Aldana. It's just going to be crickets. So, yeah, this is UFC 289, guys. This is the big card for June. This is what we've been waiting for throughout the drought with all these mediocre fight nights. Will this actually be entertaining? Like, if you tune in and watch all the fights, will you have a good time? Probably, to be honest, because that's usually how these really understacked cards play out. They happen to be really entertaining. The fighters on it, some of them are aware in regards to the card not being very good and people complaining about it, and then they go out there and do everything in their power to put on a finish or a good performance so that they can steal the show. And the last time we saw something like that happen was, I think, Yuri Prohaska and Glover Teixeira. They were in Singapore. Everyone was complaining about the card not being so great, and every fight delivered. And I just wanted to make a video about it because let's just, carry this burden together. Let's just pick up our cross, so to say, and trudge through the week. So until next time.
It's summer, and if you are running around here looking like Chris Dawkins, then you're not gonna have a good time. And I understand, having a big pot belly is comfortable, but you know what else is comfortable? Being shredded and jacked. And it isn't that difficult. You see, there's a misconception when it comes to dieting that you have to suffer on broiled chicken and broccoli, but that's a whole load of bullshit. You see, our ancestors were eating comfort foods and big hearty meals for all of human history. The only difference is you'd be hard pressed today to find a single comfort food that's not filled with seed oils and soy. And that's why my Real Food Cookbook has been made to deliver you guys comfort foods from around the world. Butter chicken, buffalo chicken wraps, homemade bolognese, homemade ice cream without any soy, and much more, so that you guys can enjoy your favorite comfort foods made with whole and unprocessed ingredients. So whether you're trying to lean out or pack on some muscle, check out my Real Food Cookbook. Use code MMA for 30% off.